Welcome to Season 2 of the Happiness Mama podcast, where mindful mamas talk about consciously creating our happiest lives. I'm your host, Heather Ash, mama of two sweet girls, blogger and coach at happinessmama.com. In Season 2, we're focusing on self-care, which is an essential ingredient for being happy. I hope you enjoy this season as I talk to creative entrepreneurs and other mamas just like you about the relationship between self-care, self-love, and happiness. Thank you for listening, and remember, you deserve happiness. Welcome to episode 20 of the Happiness Mama podcast. Yay, 20! Today's episode is all about meditation. Meditation has been a huge blessing in my life, and that's why I want to share it with you. I'm going to talk with you about how and why I got into meditation in the first place, which is a story I've never before shared publicly. I'm also going to share a blog post I wrote almost 3 years ago when I was near the start of my meditation journey. I'll be commenting some about how my meditation practice and experience have grown and changed over the years, and how they've stayed the same. I'll also be sharing with you how you can get started with meditation if that's something you're interested in. Alright, first I'll share why I started meditating. Around 4 years ago, in the fall of 2013, I was under a ton of stress. My daughters were younger and I was a stay-at-home mom. And I had a lot of stress in my relationship with my husband at the time. And there was ongoing unemployment. And so that really was a part of the major stress that I was under. I feel like I'm a really strong person and I'm a survivor. And maybe because of that, I didn't realize the toll that the stress was taking on me at that time. So one night I was home alone with my younger daughter, and out of the blue, my heart just started racing, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I ended up calling 911, and this was near Christmas, and the EMT came, but it was a young man and woman. They showed up pretty quickly, and I just remember they were really kind and reassuring, and they checked my vital signs and told me that I was having a panic attack. They said it wasn't uncommon during the holiday season when people were, when so many people were stressed out. So I was really relieved that I was not dying, that I was not having a heart attack. And I was also surprised about the panic attack. I had never had a panic attack. I didn't know that was what they were like. I really had no idea. And having that happen was extremely scary. And that's also the nature of a panic attack itself. Of course, after I had this happen, I read up on them. And it's been a while since I've read about it, thank God. But it seems like it's like the part of your brain that feels sort of a primal level of fear goes into overdrive. And that's the way I would describe it. And I guess that makes sense because when you are stressed or really stressed, it's like you're under attack. I mean, you feel like you're under attack. So anyway, I ended up having 1 or 2 more panic attacks not long after that. At least I knew in those subsequent ones, I knew that I was not having a heart attack, that was good. And I knew that it was going to be okay and that it would end. But one aspect of, all of this happening, the good thing was it was a very clear wake-up call that things needed to change and that I needed to get out from under all that stress because it was not healthy and it wasn't good and I wasn't able to, number 1, be happy, number 2, be healthy and function and, take care of my children the way I really wanted to and needed to. And I had to function, and living in fear and stress was no way to live. So my first step was to go ahead and start taking an antidepressant. And so I could tell a positive difference within just a few days of taking it. And then even more of a difference in a week. And then I felt a world better within just a few weeks. So it was very successful. It was so helpful, and it was just what I needed at the time. And I'm very thankful that I made the decision to do that. But after a while, I did feel so much better, and I was ready to come off of the medication. Also because I had started noticing that I was not quite myself as far as my range of emotions. And yes, the medication really helped me to not be stressed out, which is what I totally needed in the time that I started taking it. But over time, I just started feeling like I couldn't really cry or couldn't really laugh, and I just didn't have the depth of my normal feeling. I am a pretty emotional, sensitive person, as maybe you can tell, and that just did not feel normal, to feel like I just couldn't quite feel very deeply. And one way I imagined it at the time, it felt like I was wrapped in this giant bubble wrap. It was like I could see out into the world, and I could know how I should feel, or would feel if I could feel, but nothing quite touched me. So I was ready to find another solution. Somehow, I'm not really sure how, but I had heard about meditation and how good it was for depression and anxiety, and how research had shown that it was a great way for that to deal with that. And I think at some point around this time, I know I heard of Dan Harris, and I was fascinated by his story. He was a journalist, and he still is a journalist, and he had been recording a live broadcast on national television when he had a panic attack. And that led him to seek out meditation, and he ended up writing a book about his own journey of learning about meditation called 10% Happier, that I highly recommend, and I think I'll share more about that later in the podcast. So I looked into meditation online, and I read more about it, and it was definitely something I wanted to try, and I needed to try so that I could get off the medication and really start feeling like myself again. And let me just reiterate, I am and was so thankful for having the medication when I needed it, but, then I was ready to get off of it. And so I weaned myself off of the medication as you're supposed to do, and I also began meditating. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to jump into a blog post I wrote on November 19th, 2014, and I'm going to jump in on myself and share some comments as I go. So the name of the blog post was What I'm Doing for More Peace and Energy. Recently, I've been in a bit of a slump, feeling like there's way too much to do and too little time. And this is before any of my holiday to-dos have even made it to my list. Yikes. By the way, this was about a year after I'd had that horrible Christmas season, super stressed out panic attack time. I'd gotten through that and I'd started meditating, and it was a big help. Okay, back to the article. So I've decided to do nothing. Just kidding, sort of. I've actually decided to make a new commitment to daily meditation, and I'm going big. Inspired by Eva Raposa, I'm making my meditation a priority again and committing to meditate 20 minutes every day for a week. You might be wondering how I got into meditation in the first place. Last summer, I started looking into meditation as a natural way to deal with stress. I started reading about it on the internet, mostly looking for how to do it. There were way too many links to transcendental meditation. No offense, but I don't think anyone should have to spend thousands of dollars to learn how to meditate. So, by the way, note about this. Transcendental meditation is a type of meditation where you do have to pay like thousands of dollars to some institute, I guess, but they give you a special word, and then that's your special word to repeat and meditate on. And I know there are plenty of people, lots of celebrities, and obviously people with enough money to spend on this that have had great results with it. And I don't really, in a way, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. However, there's no way I was going to be spending thousands of dollars, and I don't think anyone should have to spend thousands of dollars to meditate, because meditation is totally free, and you don't need to spend thousands of dollars. I know, for example, Tim Ferriss did this, and I think for him, the benefit to it really was just the fact that because he had made that financial investment, he was committed. He was committed to actually doing it. And so I can see that benefit, that if you're having trouble actually committing to meditate, to meditation, then spending a ton of money on it could really up your commitment level and help you to get started. Okay, so I definitely was not going to go the transcendental meditation route. So then I turned to books, as I love to do. And after searching Amazon for books about meditation and reading tons of reviews, as I love to do, I decided to order a book called Quiet Mind, A Beginner's Guide to Meditation, compiled and edited by Susan Piver. In the book, 6 different Buddhist meditation teachers share how to meditate. I started using the first chapter, which is called Shamatha, The Practice of Tranquility, by Sakyong Mipham, as a guide to my own meditation. So, by the way, each teacher shares a different style of meditation, and a lot of them are pretty similar to the others, although they all are different. And then there are some that are significantly different in my mind than the others, but they're all really good. It's a great, great little book. So Sakyong Mipham explains that shamatha is the simplest form of sitting meditation, and it involves training our mind to come back to its natural state of being calm and clear. And I can totally go for that. In my Amazon search, I also found the book 10% Happier by Dan Harris with its 5 zillion 5-star reviews. I requested it from my library so that I wouldn't have to buy it. But after months of hardly moving up the list and an estimated wait time of approximately 10 years, I decided to just buy it. And boy, am I glad I did. I haven't laughed so hard reading a book in a long time. Maybe ever. Anne Lamott's work is a close second, I think. So in Dan's book, he shares about his journey of learning about meditation after having a nervous breakdown on national TV. I love that book so much. It was really surprisingly entertaining. Dan is such a great writer, honest, smart, and funny, and humble. So with his book as more inspiration, I decided to meditate 10 minutes a day. Does it work? And remember, this is what I wrote, 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. When I meditate daily, I feel more calm, less anxious, more mindful, and less reactive to people and circumstances. More often, I'm able to think something and then think about those thoughts as an observer so that life stresses don't affect me quite as much, at least some of the time. My experience of meditating has been that it's good and simple and surprisingly hard. Letting go of thoughts, for me, ranges from somewhat difficult to extremely difficult. To get behind the waterfall and find the stillness in your mind is not easy. Often I'm lucky to find that stillness for even 2 minutes out of 10. My meditation practice has fallen by the wayside more often than not in the past few weeks. I think part of the derailing was due to several nights of really poor sleep with a sick toddler, and my cell phone struggles, which are finally over, and just having so many other things to do, and not making it a priority. Even on, quote, normal days, it can be really hard to fit it in. With children in the house, quiet time is at a premium. So if it doesn't happen during nap time, or when Rose is at playgroup, or Lily's at school, it just doesn't happen. And by the time the kids are in bed, I'm usually exhausted. But all of these normal busy days of life, and all of the extra stressful times, are just exactly the reason why I need and want to make the time to meditate. To slow down and let my mind have a break. So that was most of the blog post that I wrote in November 2014. So my experience is still very, very much the same. And it has not, I have not achieved, even though I've been doing it for years now, several years. It's not like I've reached some level of perfection by any stretch. So often I've still got my thoughts racing through my mind. They call that monkey mind, where it's like your brain is on go, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh boy, thinking, and you just note it, thinking, and then you come back. So there's a lot of that. There's tons of thinking, even though, the goal is to focus on your breath. The practice is to come back to the breath, which I will explain in a minute. So basically my experience of meditating is still the same. And, I haven't all of a sudden become, a perfect meditator. And I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect meditator. The people that have been meditating for 20 years or whatever, they would say the same. One thing I just did want to point out, though, that actually has changed, and I'm really glad that it has, is that now I do not really need a quiet house to meditate. If the kids are watching TV, I can meditate if I really want to. Or if there are noises going on outside that in the past would drive me crazy and be really irritating, like if they were doing some building project nearby, or, running a chainsaw, or mowing the grass, or who knows what. People yelling outside, kids screaming or whatever. I mean, not that I would love that now, but it's just something where it doesn't bother me that much at all. It's just like, okay, there's some sounds, but I could still totally meditate and just accept it. Now, sometimes if I were startled these days, this is another thing, then I would note, like if I felt irritated, then I would focus on that feeling of irritation and really bring my attention to it. And then I could just let it go, which is actually part of the learning you do when you are learning to meditate. Okay, so one other thing I want to share before I share how to meditate, how to get started, is just the benefits that I've experienced in my life. So yes, I love meditating, and I need to do it every single day, and I want to do it every single day, but I don't do it every single day, but I try. And if I don't, that's okay. I'm not stressing out over that either. So I think that's so important. You can have the intention, and you can have the practice, and you can set things up in your life so that you do create a habit. But on the other hand, you do not need to beat yourself up if it doesn't happen 1 day, or 2 days, or 3 days, or whatever. Okay, what you do, and this is something I've learned through meditation, is you come back. When you're ready, you come back. So, what is it like now? I already shared what it was like then, and I said it's pretty much the same. But I'll just share a little bit more about what it's actually like. And it varies, okay? So the experience of meditating really can vary. Sometimes it does seem a lot easier just to calm down and find this beautiful empty space, which is amazing and feels so good. And then sometimes it just feels like, oh, I just keep thinking, and it's so hard to come back to the breath, or it just feels like that my mind is racing, and it's really hard to find the spaces between and to just come back to just the breath in the moment. But one thing that is very frequent and common when I meditate is just this feeling of gratitude that comes up. It just seems to bubble up most of the time when I'm meditating, and it's just a wonderful feeling, and I'm thankful for feeling thankful, because it's just such a good thing. And the other huge benefit, besides, in general, reducing stress in my life, is making me more mindful all the time. So it's amazing how the time sitting and being quiet and meditating ends up having this effect in your whole life, where you're able to actually be present in the moment, no matter what you're doing. Not that I'm always present in the moment, but that would be awesome. But it just helps me to be present more often. What a wonderful thing, right? Because that's all we really have, is this present moment. The more we can actually be mindful and be present, the more life we're really living, and the more we're really living life. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing. Okay, so it's awesome. I highly, highly recommend it. It's been great for me in my life. As I've said, a huge, huge blessing. So I really just want to share with you how to get started. And this is how I normally do it. Okay, these days I get up and I make my coffee in my French press, and usually I wait until after I'm completely done making my coffee, because I'm also usually emptying the dishwasher or something like that. But after I'm done, I just go to the table and I turn on my Insight Timer on my phone. These days I'm using this app called Insight Timer, and I've been using it for a while now. I've used it at other times in the past. I kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. But lately I'm in a big stretch of using it, and I like using it. I set my timer for 5 minutes. I'm only meditating for 5 minutes at a time as my normal practice, which honestly, I do wish it were longer. 5 minutes doesn't seem like that long of a time. And, in the past I've meditated for longer. But right now, with working full time, being a single mom, I just don't really have a whole lot of time. And in the morning, for my morning routine, there's a lot more to it than just my meditation. There is, my journaling, which I've talked about when I did the bullet journaling episode last time. So there's a lot I need to get done in the morning. So I don't feel like I have more than 5 minutes, although really, what's an extra 5 minutes, right? Maybe I should just try doing the 10 minutes or just wake up 5 minutes earlier, I could totally do that. But anyway, just sharing with you what my current practice is. Lately, it's usually just 5 minutes, except sometimes on the weekend, then I definitely don't feel as rushed and I could do longer. Also, I would love to do like 20 minutes in the evening or afternoon, and occasionally I will do that, but on a regular basis these days, it's just 5 minutes. So I set my Insight timer, press start, and I'm just sitting there in my chair, and I close my eyes, and I'm sitting Indian style, which is not exactly how they recommend either. But I do try to sit up straight, but honestly, I kind of let that go sometimes too. So do it however you really want to is my recommendation. Do it however you will do it. I'm often counting my breaths, which is a great way if you're a beginner. You just decide where you're going to focus on your breath, whether it's like your nostrils or maybe your chest. You can just focus on your chest, the feel of it, in your chest. But you choose where you're going to focus on your breath, and you just bring your attention to that. And then you can actually count your breath. So on the in breath, you count 1, and then you breathe out. And then on the next in breath, that's 2. Also, by the way, you're not doing any special breathing exercise. You're just breathing normally and noticing it. Okay, so this is not like trying to hold your breath or trying to breathe deeply. No. You're just paying attention to your normal breathing. So that's all you do. You can either count your breaths as you do it, or you can just notice your breath. And that's the way you get started. What seems to happen is that after a while of doing that, and especially if you go for a longer time, it seems, you can just kind of settle into this quiet awareness. And in Vipassana meditation, you are actually just being aware of whatever thoughts and feelings arise. And it's different from thinking, because in thinking, you're not aware that you're doing it. You're just totally lost to it. It's like you completely identify with your thought. But in meditation, you're aware that you're thinking, and you can kind of look at it. It's really pretty cool. When you're meditating, what will definitely happen is your mind will wander. Thoughts will come in, you'll start thinking, and then come back to the breath. Once you realize you're thinking, you can note it. Like what I do now is if I start thinking, I'll just say to myself, thinking, once I realize I am thinking, and then I'll just bring my attention back to the breath. So that's what you do. I will come back to the blog post for a minute now and read to you how I wrote the directions. So I wrote how to meditate. Here's how I usually do it. I definitely need to be alone in a quiet place. So like I told you, I don't really need to be alone anymore, but you might want to as you get started. I usually sit on my bed, breaking the rules, or sometimes in a chair. I close my eyes and focus on my breath without trying to control it or change it. I try to let go of thoughts. When thoughts arise, as they will, I mentally give myself a hug and consciously let go of them. I consciously do not judge myself for thinking. I accept my thoughts and then let them go. And then I come back to the breath. Or I just pay attention to whatever I'm thinking or feeling. What it's like for me sometimes. It's interesting to come to a place of noticing your thinking without identifying with it. And sometimes I get to this place of quiet awareness. And that's a really nice break from the constant torrent of thoughts. Just to let you know, those moments are not long, maybe just seconds or a few minutes at most. And I think that may increase as I practice more. Sometimes my mind wants to think, but I can make an effort to keep out the thoughts. It reminds me of how in Twilight, Bella has the power of being able to project an invisible protective barrier around herself and others. Sometimes I imagine something like this bubble, this force field, holding back my thoughts, protecting my peaceful state. Sometimes I envision being at the bottom of the ocean, looking up towards the surface of the water, with my thoughts as ships floating by. And sometimes focusing on the breath turns into being aware of whatever is there, which the second chapter of Quiet Mind explains is Vipassana or insight meditation. I'll also say that sometimes it's just a pure struggle. My thoughts are racing and I have to come back to the breath over and over because thoughts keep on popping up. That's normal too. The goodness apparently is in the coming back over and over. It's a workout for your brain. Okay, so that's what I wrote in that blog post, and I want to point out that it's not really a struggle for me now because I don't feel like I'm trying to win or beat something or achieve some goal. It's a really wonderful thing, learning to let go of the outcome. I mean, it is nice. It's nice when you do have it's nice when your mind isn't racing. And yes, that is, something we want, but I'm just saying that I do think the way I think about this has changed for the better. That even though sometimes I might be thinking for so much of this time where I am meditating, I don't feel bad about it when I realize it, and that's a beautiful thing and that's a good thing. And you don't need to feel bad about it. It's normal. You realize it and you come back. But it is true that it is a workout, and it's something that through practice, our brains can be trained to get better and better about being in this state of being in the moment. So it's very cool, really amazing. Back to the blog post. So meditation is for me and you. I'm not a meditation expert, but I don't have to be to experience its benefits, and neither do you. I don't recommend trying to completely understand it before you do it. You really don't need to. Just read some directions or listen to these directions that I just gave you and do it without worrying about doing it just right or without trying to achieve anything. So that's it. I totally agree with that. I say just start, just close your eyes, bring your attention to your breath and get started. Now, how much should you do? That's a big question maybe at first. You need to do just whatever feels easy for you to start. That is my recommendation. So even if that's just 1 or 2 breaths, 1 or 2 mindful breaths every day at a certain time would be nice. Great. Or if you feel like you can do 2 minutes and that feels easy, do 2 minutes. Or if you feel like you could start with 5 minutes. But whatever you do, start with whatever feels super easy. I do recommend, as I've said before at some point, I'm sure, ideally try to do it at the same time every day. Do it right after something that you always do. That'll be your anchor habit. Like for me, basically, once I bring my coffee to the table, I know that's when I'm going to pull out my phone and turn on my timer and do it. Whatever current habit you have that you can tie that to, great. And then you can always increase it. But I would make my focus more on doing it every day than doing it for a long time. So I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear any questions that you have about this. Just email me at heather@happinessmama.com. I believe it's for everybody. I believe it's awesome and helpful. And research has shown how beneficial it is for stress. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stress around, and we know that stress causes so many health problems, and it's really hard to be really happy when you're super stressed. So for me, meditation is necessary, and I just love it so much, and it makes me feel great, and as I said, it really has far-reaching consequences over my whole life. And it just makes me so glad that I discovered it and that I started practicing it. I do hope this is helpful. There are other types of meditation that I may talk about at another time, like guided meditation and metta that I've mentioned before, which is loving kindness meditation, and other aspects of it, such as really getting into being aware of your feelings and thoughts and your body. But just to get started, I think this is a good place to stop, and I would challenge you to go ahead and pick a number of minutes, maybe it's 1 minute or 2 minutes, to get started and do it every day for a week, and then get in touch with me. Why don't you email me when you start, and then email me at the end of your week and let me know how it went. I would love to hear from you. All right. Please do subscribe on iTunes if you haven't already. And feel free to share this with your friends. And if you haven't left me a review yet, that would be so sweet. I would love it. But most of all, please do get in touch. I would really love to hear from you. All right. Please do remember to take good care of yourself, and remember that you definitely do deserve happiness.